And I'd like to welcome you all to our Tuesday 1:30 p.m. session, where we'll be hearing from Margaret Wonah on Diabetes 101, What You Need to Know. I'm going to read our disclaimer before we get started. The WildTech DC Senior iPad program, its owners and presenters offer technical assistance, virtual health well-being information designed for educational purposes only. You should not rely on the information, any applications, or topics made by WildTech, including but not limited to mobile device applications and any social media pages maintained by WildTech, its owners, or presenters as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or legal advice. If you cannot see us, hear us, or see the screen, please let us know in the chat. I always recommend that you have some kind of notes next to you so you can record them and review them for later. And again, as always, make sure your TVs and cell phones are silenced to give others, and most importantly, yourselves, the most immersive experience, okay? Other than that, again, Margaret, if you could introduce yourself and your topic for today, we would really appreciate that. But once again, thanks so much for joining our presentation today. And everyone, hope you all learned something new.
Thank you so much, Alex. I'm going to go ahead now and share my screen.
Yep, hit your home button.
Yeah, it's coming up. All right, please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, you can drag yourself at the bottom left. You can move the box to the left so you can minimize it. So yeah, all the way to the right. There you go.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. So as Alex has already said, my name is Margaret Wonah. I'm a pharmacist from Nigeria, and I have over 6 years of experience working with patients from community pharmacy setting, but specifically in 2020, I founded the Diabetes Care Network. Now, I did this because my mom was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and it made me realize how much people from my community did not know anything about the disease. So there were lots of myths and folk tales around diabetes, where most persons ascribed the disease to a spiritual problem. And it was a very shocking experience for me. I decided to take it upon myself to teach people how best to manage the disease. So in the past 4 years, I've successfully helped my mom manage type 2 diabetes safely. And due to the work we do at the Diabetes Care Network, I was given the Mandela Washington Fellowship Award to come to the US and learn and improve upon my skills, which is how I got placed with White Tech, and it has been an amazing journey so far. Okay, so at the Diabetes Care Network, we've authored 3 books. One is a meal plan titled Eat to Beat Diabetes, and it's centered around the local foods available in Nigeria. The essence of doing this is to ensure that the foods available in Nigeria can be eaten in such a way that would not lead to a spike in their sugar levels. I'm going to explain more about diabetes in the course of this presentation, but please do well to let me know if you have any questions as we proceed. So far, we've been able to educate at least 20,000 people, and the testimonial has been amazing. Here are some of the testimonials that proves that in managing type 2 diabetes, the kind of foods you eat, the activities you do are as important as the medications you take, as we would get to understand during the course of the presentation. Now, what to expect from today's section? We'll be looking at what diabetes is, the various types of diabetes. We'll also dive into the signs and symptoms of diabetes. Then we'll watch a very short but interesting video that shows us how to understand our blood glucose readings. then would go into superfoods for type 2 diabetes. For me, my mantra is your lifestyle should be your fuel. So as much as we take medications for our diabetes, it's important that we watch the kind of foods we also eat. Then we'll look at the importance of exercises in managing diabetes. So what is diabetes? Diabetes is a chronic progressive disorder that affects how the body converts food to energy. Now, this results in high blood sugar levels. In understanding diabetes, it is important that we know that the body does not convert food the usual way as it's supposed to. And as a result of that, there is high level of sugar in your blood or glucose, which shouldn't be. It is important to note that our bodies operate in a state of balance where your sugar level should not be too high and it shouldn't be too low. So it should be within the normal range. As with almost everything, your blood pressure should not be too high, it shouldn't be too low. The amount of water you consume should not be too high, it should not be too low. It should be in a state of normalcy, and that is the way the body operates, right? In diabetes, there's this hormone called insulin, and it's very, very important that we understand what insulin is. Insulin is the hormone that is responsible for ensuring that the sugar in your body or in your bloodstream is within the normal range. So usually when we eat, insulin is released in response to the food we've eaten. What it does, it's like a lock and key. Insulin goes to the various cells of the body, open them up to receive the glucose that the food we've eaten are converted most times to glucose. So insulin goes to the cells of the body, opens them up to allow them receive this glucose into the cells for the work they're supposed to do. But where insulin is not in sufficient quantity, or the cells no longer recognize the actions of insulin, it then means that we are going to have excess of the sugar in your bloodstream, whereas the cells that actually need it don't have access to it. Now, when this condition occurs, it leads to the body trying to compensate by increasing the production of insulin. Like I said, the body is most functional when everything is in a state of balance. When your sugar level is high, it triggers the cells, the body to increase the production of insulin so that it could help move the excess sugar in your blood into the cells. Now, where this continues over a period of time, you could come down with, it could lead to increased level of cholesterol, which is why for people with, most persons with type 2 diabetes, they have high levels of cholesterol as well. Then it could lead to fatty liver, weight gain, insulin resistance, etc. Now, what are the different types of diabetes? We have type 1 diabetes. Now, type 1 diabetes is also commonly known as early onset diabetes. It presents in early childhood, and it is due to the fact that the pancreas, in the pancreas, there are cells called the beta cells that are responsible for the production of insulin. So in type 1 diabetes, the beta cells have been destroyed. They are no longer functioning. And because of that, insulin is not produced. The cause of this is not well known. It has been attributed to some viral diseases or an autoimmune disorder where the cells of the body fight itself. Sometimes it's due to genetic predisposition, right? But in type 1 diabetes, it is essential we understand that the cells that produce insulin are not functioning at all. So insulin is not being produced. Now imagine what happens when insulin, which is a major hormone that is important in how your body utilizes energy, is deficient in the system. It means your blood sugar level is going to be high. always high, and that is a cause for alarm. That is when you say the person is diabetic. And if the results shows that the beta cells are defective, it's called type 1 diabetes. This usually occurs in children, and sometimes they grow up to adult stage as well. Now, some signs you would see here is inability to put on weight. So there are lots of children, when they are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, they find it very difficult to put on weight. And that is because insulin that helps convert sugar to fat, it's not in the body, right? And you're always coming down with high blood sugar levels. As we proceed, you would see the impact of excess sugar in your body. Now, for treatment, insulin is the mainstay of management. So for people with type 1 diabetes, they have to be on consistent supply of insulin. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I can always pause to answer your questions, okay? Now, for type 2 diabetes, it's actually the most common type of diabetes, but in this case, the body has or produces insulin, but the insulin produced is not in sufficient quantity, or the cells of the body have somehow become insensitive to the action of insulin. Remember, I mentioned that it's like a lock and key partnership where insulin opens the cells to accept the glucose in the bloodstream. But when the cells of the body do not recognize the action of insulin, it means that insulin, though present, it no longer cannot function, right? And this leads to high levels of glucose in the blood. For type 2 diabetes, they respond to medication, and in some instances, your primary care physician can also prescribe insulin for you. For type 2 diabetes, studies have shown that it is majorly lifestyle dependent. In Africa, in Nigeria, where I come from, people in the urban settings are more likely to develop type 2 diabetes than those in the rural settings. This is because those in the rural settings still are more physically active. They don't get to eat lots of processed meals, so they just go to their farm and eat their produce directly. But those in urban settlements, because of the hustle and bustle of life, they are not physically active, right? So they practice what we call sedentary lifestyle, where you go from your car to your office and you sit for 9 hours without exercising at all. And they consume lots of processed foods, which increases their risk of coming down with type 2 diabetes. So for type 2 diabetes, it is largely dependent on the lifestyle, although genetic factors and family predisposition also plays. If a family member has type 2 diabetes, there is this likelihood that another person from that family could come down with type 2 diabetes, but it is not always the case. Now, obesity and fatty liver can also trigger what we call sugar overload, which is a sign of type 2 diabetes. Then certain diseases as well, like hypothyroidism. For my mom, hers was precipitated by this disease called hypothyroidism. We realized that she had hypothyroidism, and then her sugar level became very high. So that diabetes is sort of multifactorial, which is why it is very important when you notice any of the symptoms that you go to the hospital and consult with your primary care physician. Then the last type of diabetes we'll be looking at is gestational diabetes. Now, this one occurs due to pregnancy. So we find out that in some women, once they conceive, over a period of time, they come down with type 2 diabetes, right? And most times it resolves after delivery, okay? But in some persons, it could progress to full-blown diabetes. So in Nigeria, we encourage pregnant women to always go for their antenatal clinics early enough so they can be properly managed. As a way of recap, we've looked at 3 types of diabetes: type 1, type 2, and gestational diabetes. Well, there's another type called prediabetes. So this is quite common in most young adult populations where the glucose level is quite high, but is not high enough to be diagnosed as diabetes. So this is why we encourage people to always go for routine health checks. That way you're able to identify your risk and work towards reversing it. Pre-diabetes can be easily reversed using lifestyle, your diet, working with your dietitian and your primary health care physician. You can easily reverse pre-diabetes from progressing to type 2 diabetes. But if you allow it to catch you unawares, you would not know when it has progressed to full-blown type 2 diabetes. So for here, the key takeaway is if we have any member of our family who we feel has not been taking their checkup seriously, we should encourage them to do regular health checks just so they are able to catch some of these numbers early enough and reverse it. Okay, so before we proceed to the signs and symptoms, are there any questions for me so far?
Again, thank you so much, Margaret, for talking about this topic. It's so important. I definitely learned more about gestational diabetes. I didn't know as much as I did now with your session. So thank you so much for that. And some of
You're
the
welcome.
actual reasons and causes for each type of diabetes. It's not too different. It's just it's really important to recognize which one that you have or that you know someone has, and that's how you can help out the best, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. So yes, we do have two questions, both from our Anns. So first up is Ms. Chukwu. Do you have any questions about or comments about anything Margaret has talked about so far?
Yeah. I want to ask her about what do we do as in exercise to prevent pre-diabetes. Anything we can do to prevent pre-diabetes?
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for that question. That's a very important one. Yes, to prevent pre-diabetes, you have to watch the kind of foods you eat. Like I earlier mentioned, in type 2 diabetes, it is mostly dependent on lifestyle, although genetic factors could come in. Certain diseases could also lead to type 2 diabetes, but majorly the kind of foods we eat can influence how much risk or pressure we put on our on the insulin produced. So one key step to preventing pre-diabetes is watching the kind of foods you eat. So as we progress, I'm going to be showing us some superfoods for type 2 for diabetics. So if you're able to watch the kind of foods we eat, we would greatly reduce our risk of coming down with pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. Also, sedentary lifestyle. Studies have shown that people who are more physically active tend to reduce their risk of coming down with type 2 diabetes. But I do understand that as seniors, there's a limit to how much we can exercise. So in this presentation, I'm going to show us what is required, but these two things are very important. The kind of foods you eat and how active you are physically can greatly reduce your chances of coming down with pre-diabetes, and as well as most chronic diseases as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you so much, Anne, for your question. Don't forget to mute yourself afterwards so we can hear from everyone. Thank you. Any other questions for Margaret? I saw we had a couple of hands, but maybe Anne's question answered your question, but any other questions for Margaret before we move on to some signs and symptoms? You can also put your questions or comments or anything you'd like in the chat as well. Okay, and also, as always, don't forget to lower your hand and mute yourself so that way when you get your question answered, we can hear from everyone. Next up is Dolores. Hi, Dolores. Hope you're well.
Hello.
You had a question or comment for Margaret about anything so far?
I just want to be a little bit, ask her to be a little bit more specific when she made the statement as far as the type of food that you could eat to prevent pre-diabetes. Instead of just saying the type, you'll change your eating habit. But what type of food are you recommending? Like, can you give us an example?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's part of the presentation. That was why I said before the end of the presentation, we look at those foods. But for example, it is recommended that we use what we call the plate method, where 50% of the foods are filled with green vegetables, then 25% are carbs, then 25% proteins. So as we progress in the presentation, I'm going to show you some of the superfoods you can eat and why they are superfoods too, that helps manage type 2 diabetes as well as prevent the disease. So let's just progress and get more specific with the kind of foods to eat. Does that work?
Yes, that will. Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you.
So Alex, can I
Yep.
continue so we can
Yes, we actually have one more question. Can you take that?
Oh, sure.
And then we'll move on. But again, thank you so much, Dolores. Again, don't forget to lower your hand and mute yourself. Thank you so much. And our last question for today is from Brenda. For now, until we move on, is Ms. Thompson. You had a question or comment for Margaret?
Yes. I was diagnosed with diabetes at 12 years old. It didn't break. When I was younger, I used to faint a lot. My parents didn't have me on a diet. I wasn't on insulin. And when I turned 42, I thought I was going blind. My sugar was up to four something. I couldn't see my time card. I would have to get somebody to get my time card if I could punch in. And when I told the doctor and I went to my doctor, I could only read the green on the eye chart. And he put me on medication. When I came to DC, I was like 49. They put me on insulin. I always wondered, what was I, a 1 or a 2? How would I be able to tell which am I, a 1 or a 2?
Well, okay. Thank you so much for that question and thank you for sharing. I believe your primary care physician was supposed to tell you if you had asked, but given the fact that it started at a very early age of 12, it's most likely a 1, but that is something that your primary healthcare physician would be able to tell based on specific tests conducted in the hospital.
I asked her.
Yeah.
She said I'm a type 2 diabetic.
Type 2.
Yeah, but what happened to when I was 12 and was diagnosed as a diabetic and would faint all the time?
Well, I believe due to the result of the test conducted, it would point probably due to the results conducted. Remember, in type 1 diabetes, you don't have any form of insulin produced by the beta cells. So if the test results show that there are lots of, that insulin is still produced by the beta cells, then it's most likely type 2. So like I said, it's the work of your primary care physician to conduct those tests and give experts advice and diagnosis.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brenda. Appreciate it. And Ms. Dina, we got to move on, but keep your hand up or you can put your question in the chat. We'd really appreciate that so we can hear from all of the session. But thank you so much. Yeah, Margaret, thanks so much for answering those questions. I look forward to learning more.
Sure. Okay, so let's proceed. We'll be looking at the signs and symptoms of diabetes. Okay, so There are certain experiences you'd have that would point you towards, like that will show you that something is actually wrong in your body system. And I'll try to explain a bit some of these mechanisms and how it gets to these symptoms. Number one is excessive hunger. Now, remember when I was explaining how diabetes comes about, there's excess of sugar in your blood, but the cells in the body, like your brain cells, your heart cells, your muscle cells that need this glucose to function, don't have access to it because either insulin is not produced or the cells are no longer responsive to the action of insulin. All it means is, although there is lots of glucose flowing in your blood, the cells are starved of glucose. So they trigger your brain cells to tell you to eat more food so they can get the glucose. So because of that, you feel you have this excessive appetite, need to eat, whereas what you need is insulin to do its work properly, right? So another is excessive taste. Now, because the glucose in your blood is above the normal range, which is toxic to the body triggers your kidneys to remove this excess glucose through urination, which also brings us to the next symptom, excessive urination, because they are all interconnected. So because the glucose level in your blood is so high, you tend to always urinate as a means of removing or excreting the excess glucose in your body. Because once any of these once glucose is high, that's hyperglycemia, certain things in the body begins to go wrong. So the body tries to bring it back to normal range, which makes you urinate frequently. And this is something I've experienced firsthand in my mom. She was urinating every 5 minutes. It's very scary. She was urinating every 5 minutes. And as you're urinating, your fluid volume drops and you want to drink more water. So it's a vicious cycle of excessive thirst, excessive urination, excessive hunger. So these are the three classical signs of high blood sugar level. Another is blood vision. So if you notice that your vision is getting blurry, you need to go talk to your primary care physician immediately. Then we have what we call numbness. This is as a result of neuropathy. If you notice any form of numbness, especially in your hands or your toes, or any form of burning sensation, it is important that you go to the hospital and talk to your primary care physician. In men, most of them come down with erectile dysfunction, although ED can be caused by so many things. But if you have persistent erectile dysfunction that is not responding to treatment, you might want to also talk to your primary care physician about that. Then unexplained weight loss. So you see someone who was very chubby at some point, and all of a sudden it was not planned, and the person just loses so much weight. I saw this in my mom, like she dropped. It was it was frightening. It's a sign of high blood sugar levels because the cells don't have the needed nutrients they would use to produce more cells, to regenerate, to produce more muscle cells, to produce more fats. Everything just goes off. So you also have what we call non-healing wounds. Now, when you have any form of injury on your body, what happens is through the bloodstream, some chemicals are released that facilitates wound healing. But because of high levels of glucose in your blood flow to the place of injury becomes limited. And for every time your blood is not healing, it becomes breeding grounds for bacterial infection, right? So if you have an injury that is not responding to treatment, then you might want to talk to your primary care physician to do a fasting blood sugar test, because non-healing wounds is a very, very clear indication of high blood sugar levels, and it should be treated immediately. So if you notice any of these symptoms, excessive hunger, excessive thirst, frequent urination, blood vision, numbness, non-healing wounds, please do well to go to the hospital or contact your primary care physician. In medicine, it's often said that a stitch in time saves 9. So early detection, if any disease is caught early enough, it can be better managed than when caught later. Okay. All right, so now we're going to watch a very short video that shows us the normal values of our sugar readings and what to do if we notice that our sugar levels are either too high or too low. So I'm going to play it now.
5 words you pronounce wrong 2 years before your brain starts shutting down.
Hi, this is Josh. I'm a pharmacist with pharmacisttips.com. Just going to cover quickly blood sugar levels. I'm going to go over a chart that kind of shows you what ranges, where your ranges should fall, that makes you considered diabetic or pre-diabetic, or what normal blood sugar levels are. So we'll get right to it. Here's a blood sugar level chart. We've got a category for normal, pre-diabetic, and then diagnosed as type 2 diabetic. Keep in mind, any one reading does not diagnose you as diabetic. We're kind of looking at a general trend, and this is something your doctor would help determine if you are diabetic. But typically when we're fasting, that'd be first thing in the morning for most folks. You get up, you take a blood sugar reading. Normal ranges would be between 70 and 100 milligrams per deciliter. That's how we generally measure here in the U.S. Many other countries use millimolar per liter. That's generally 3.8 between 5.6. Now you will see there's a popular keto diet now. A lot of those folks will get below 70 and they seem to do just fine with that. I know I've tried it before. I've had readings below 70. It's not considered normal, as that's not a state the normal population is in, but typically that can occur. So you don't want to talk to your doctor if you have a reading below 70 and you're concerned about that. Pre-diabetic generally falls between 100 and 125 first thing in the morning, depending on what reference. Some references will have more like 110 to 125. Again, it's the different organizations have slightly different recommendations as the category of pre-diabetic, but generally somewhere between 100 and 125 is considered pre-diabetic, or 5.6 to 6.9 millimolar per liter. And then generally one is diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic when that morning or that fasting reading is 126 or greater, or 7 millimolar or greater. Another important number is 2 hours after a meal. If you're normal, if you don't have diabetes, it should be 140 or less, or 7.8 or less. Pre-diabetic category, you're going to be 140 between 199 or 7.8 to 11 millimolar. And then type 2 diabetics, it'll often be 200 or more 2 hours after eating a meal, or 11 millimolar or greater. Also, your doctor may order a test called an A1C. That gives an average of basically 3 months of blood sugars. Normal typically going to be considered 6% or less. Again, there is some wiggle room in these numbers. Some organizations may put that a little bit lower at like 5.8, I think. But generally 6 to 6.4%, you're going to be in that pre-diabetic category. Type 2, 6.5 or greater. So when do you test blood sugar? Of course, you want to have meaningful blood sugar readings. You want to test fasting often, first thing in the morning, 2 hours after eating, more as directed by your doctor. If you have, if you're using insulin, or if you're sick, often that warrants checking several more times a day. That's something that you and your doctor need to talk about. I do appreciate you watching this. I hope you found this information useful. Go ahead and ask any questions in the comments below. I will do my best to answer them. Always, always, always talk to your
Okay. Hi, Alex.
Yes, Margaret, everything okay?
Uh, Yeah.
You're trying to go back to your presentation, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go hit your home button, go to Canva. And then tap the screen. There should be an X at the top left.
Let me stop sharing, then we share.
Okay, yes.
Well, any question, any thoughts about the
Yes.
videos?
Any thoughts on the video all? Please raise your hand. Any thoughts, any questions or comments about the video that Margaret just shared? Please raise your hand in Zoom. Okay, Ms. Vernell, any questions or comments on the video?
Yes, I would like to know if diabetes can be reversed, and if so, how?
Okay, so for type 2 diabetes, yes, studies have shown that type 2 diabetes can be reversed. However, you need to talk with your primary care physician and your dietitian, because it's a multidisciplinary approach to reversing type 2 diabetes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so you have to talk to your diabetes team,
Yes.
and they'll be able to show you what to do to reverse this.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I just like to know. I just wanted to know whether or not it can be reversed. I'm glad to hear that it can. So I will talk to my doctor.
Yeah, and it's actually just type 2 diabetes that can be reversed, like we've mentioned. It's only type 2 diabetes that studies have shown that people can successfully reverse it. For type 1, insulin is not produced at all, so there's really little that anyone can do. But for type 2, yes, with lifestyle changes, with the support of your dietitian, your doctor, your nurses, you'll be able to gain considerable results. Now, diabetes is said to be reversed or to be put into remission when you no longer need medications to achieve consistent glycemic control. That is, you no longer need medications. That is, you no longer need medications to
Okay, thank you.
achieve normal blood sugar level for a period of 3 months. Yeah. Okay, thank you. All
Thank
right,
you
so
so
now
much,
we'll
Ms. Vernell. We really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your question. Don't forget to lower your hand and mute yourself like before. Thank you. Our next question, again, regarding the video, is from Ms. Dolores. You had a question or comment for Margaret?
I had a comment. I'm glad that saw the video with the correct numbers. What the normal numbers should be for diabetic when before they eat and after they eat, because I was told that if it's 180, it's good after they eat, but I thought that was kind of high, but I saw on the chart that they had, it was a little lower than 180.
Very true. Thank you so much for the comment. So it's very important that we know the correct numbers so we don't panic whereas we are doing okay. For some persons, they don't know that 2 hours after eating a carb-rich food, the sugar level should be within a certain range, right? And if you don't have this awareness, you tend to panic when you shouldn't be panicking. So it's very important that we gain the right knowledge. That is where our healthcare team comes in. your primary care physician, your diabetes team. That's where they come in to educate you so that you're able to identify these numbers yourself and you're able to make informed decisions, right? Thank you so much. Alex, any other question?
Yes, thank you so much, Dolores. Thank you so much for lowering your hand and muting yourself. Thank you so much. Our next comment or question is from Mr. Thomas. Hope you're well. You have a question or comment for Margaret?
Yes, I have a couple of things. Number one, of the 11 points that you made in your presentation there, I had 8 of them, which when diagnosed turned out to be diabetes. One of the things that I have learned is that men do not go to the doctor enough. And so we hold back our problems until we're in trouble.
Mm.
And I have been diabetic now for about 10, 12 years. And I regret that I didn't and was not aware of what the danger signs were. In my case, it was drinking a quart of orange juice every day, 7 days a week. And that was bad news for me. Anyway, I'm enjoying the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments. Yeah, it's very important that we do routine health check early enough so we are able to catch if anything is going wrong in our bodies. Like I mentioned, for pre-diabetes, if you're able to identify it early enough, chances of reversing it is very high compared to when it has increased to or progressed to type 2 diabetes. So if you've not gotten anything at all from this section, the one thing I would love us to take home is the fact that frequent health checks with your primary care physician is very, very important. More important as we age. So for our seniors, it is very important that we go for regular health checks so we're able to catch or identify any abnormality and we can work towards saving or course correcting early enough. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thomas. And our last hand for now, I know we have a couple slides left, so our last hand for now is from Anne. Thanks so much again. Question or comment about the video?
It gave me an insight. I've had diabetes for quite a while, and I am glad to see that stuff that I eat, that I can't eat the avocado anymore, but I'm glad to see that the superfoods for diabetes are stuff that I eat. And I have been on the medicine and I have lost a lot of weight since I've been going to the diabetic clinic. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much, Anne. And I look forward to some more information, Margaret. Thanks so much so far. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's proceed to the superfoods for diabetes. So it's very easy to identify what to eat if you're diabetic, because the more processed a meal is, the less nutritious it is. So let me repeat, the more processed a food is, the less nutritious it is. So if any food you're eating that doesn't look as it originally was in nature, is less nutritious for you and it's not recommended or regarded as a superfood. So dark leafy vegetables usually come the way we eat them most times the way they are in nature. And the fact that they are very colored shows that they are rich in what we call antioxidants. I will not want to bore us with lots of medical jargons, but when we eat processed meals, due to certain environmental conditions, there's something called free radicals that is produced in the body. Now, when free radicals accumulate, they harm the body. So you need antioxidants to mop off those free radicals. So when we eat vegetables, fresh veggies, they are filled with lots of antioxidants that helps boost our immune system. Aside the antioxidants content, they also have lots of minerals, vitamins that helps improve our immune system. So that's why your dark leafy vegetables are superfoods for diabetes and for every other condition, because they are rich in antioxidants and essential vitamins. Another is almonds. In diabetes, there is a concept called glycemic index that tells you how much a given meal would increase your sugar level. So it runs from a scale of 1 to 100. If a food has a glycemic index of 70, it means that if you ingest that food, it's going to increase or cause a spike in your sugar level quickly. But if it has a low glycemic index, say of 10, 15, it would not lead to a quick spike in your sugar level. So nuts like almonds, healthy nuts, they all have almost zero glycemic indices. What this means is when you eat these nuts, they are rich in fiber, they are rich in nutrients, but they don't spike your sugar level. So they are very, very good for diabetics. However, as seniors, it is important that when chewing on nuts, we chew carefully so it doesn't go to the wrong canal, so we don't choke. So if you're eating your nuts, you should be very careful while chewing, but not like almonds. Almonds are my favorite because they are rich in vitamin E, they are rich in fatty acids, they are rich in antioxidants, and they are sugar free. They don't spike your sugar level, so you can eat lots of it without having any considerable spike in your sugar level. Now, avocados are superfoods. They are superfoods. Why I love avocados and is because they are filled with fiber. Fibers make you feel fuller for longer. So when you eat foods rich in fibers, you get satisfied quickly enough, and your appetite sort of reduces. So you don't have the need to keep eating consistently, because fiber-rich meals make you feel fuller for longer. Another thing I would want to mention here is our fruits. Smoothies are recommended than taking fruit juices, right? So if you have your fruit, it's important that you sort of convert them into smoothies. You can use, depending on the recipe you want, you can throw in some avocado, throw in some beetroot, throw in some watermelon, and just blend it into a smoothie. When you eat smoothie, you're able to enjoy the nutrients that comes from the fruits you've added into it, as well as the fibers in it, compared to just juicing. So instead of juicing your watermelon, it is recommended that you do a smoothie instead, so you can benefit from the fiber content. It's also important to know that fibers help with our bowel movements. So when you eat foods rich in fibers, it sort of helps with your digestive system. It makes you feel fuller for longer, and you enjoy the nutrients in these natural foods. Another food that I love so much is berries. Berries are super, super healthy for diabetics because the sugar content is low and they are rich with antioxidants and vitamins. Then yogurt. Yogurt is a superfood, not just for diabetics, but for everybody. Yogurts are filled with what we call probiotics. So these are healthy organisms that protect the digestive tract and boost our immune system. So there's a local meal in Nigeria, called parfait. So what we do is we just add lots of nuts to your yogurt and you enjoy it. When you eat this, if you add nuts to your yogurt, you get full. It's as though you've eaten a complete meal. You're very satisfied, but you're satisfied on healthy meals, right? And they protect not just your immune system, but they also help with your digestion as well. So some superfoods for diabetics. The hack here is to understand that half of your plate should be filled with dark leafy vegetables. 25% of it should be protein, 25% should be carbs. Some persons feel that carbs should be removed from our diet because they are rich in sugar, which is not true. You need carbs to gain energy, but the manner and the quantity of the carbs you eat is very important. That is why you need to work with your dietitian and your primary care physician. And that brings us to the last slide, which is exercises. I mentioned that the foods we eat and how active we are play important role in managing type 2 diabetes and also reducing our risk for coming down with the disease. So it is recommended that we exercise at least 30 minutes per day. Again, as seniors, we should know what works for us so we don't overstretch our capacities, right? But if you can walk for 30 minutes a day, please do. In exercising, consistency matters. So instead of doing 1 hour stretch a week and not exercise for the next 7 days, it's important to spread it out over a period of time. Then at least exercise 5 days a week. This is to show that consistency matters, or it counts when trying to exercise for our health. So at least 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. You can increase or reduce it based on your strength or the recommendation of your physician, right? Then recommended exercises, of course, you'd want to talk to your physiotherapist. Brisk walking, it's safe as long as you don't overdo it. Again, it's understanding what works best for you. If you have the energy to go jogging, then it's fine. Otherwise, you just talk to your physiotherapist and you can come up with an exercise plan that is tailored to your specific health needs. The goal is to get our body moving daily for at least 30 minutes. That way we are able to enjoy the health benefits that exercise offers. Okay, so I'm going to show us these documents. Exercise, diabetics and seniors. Let's see if we can review it together. Okay, so this is from the Endocrine Society. All right. So it says that according to the CDC, 33% of adults 65 years or older have diabetes. Most times it's type 2 diabetes, and the number of older people with diabetes is expected to rise significantly in the decades to follow. Now, for managing type 2 diabetes, it is important that we embrace a collaborative care approach. That is why I try to do in my organization, where we have a support group or we bring multidisciplinaries to come train diabetics on how best to manage the disease. So it's best to have a support system if you're type 2 diabetic. So yeah, they're talking about collaborative care. It is important that people with diabetes explore what we call collaborative care, right? So important considerations include supporting at-home needs, monitoring interactions between medications, preventing falls. So you need a team to help you better manage type 2 diabetes. That's just the essence of these documents. Now, tips for diabetes care. It's important that you talk honestly with your healthcare team so they can develop a healthy eating plan for you. It is also important that we consistently monitor our blood glucose levels. This is important. If you don't monitor your sugar level, you don't know how the foods you eat affect your sugar levels, right? So it is important that we consistently monitor so that your sugar level does not go too low where it becomes dangerous, and it's not too high where it's also dangerous. So the aim is to keep it within the normal range. Also, if you're prescribed medications, make sure you ask your healthcare provider how to take your medications. And if you're going to be using a device, ensure you know how to, you have the appropriate training, or you have someone that can assist you in administering the medication. It is also very important that you communicate any symptom you experience with your healthcare professional, no matter how little it is. Diabetes can be managed safely, but if it is ignored, the complications are heartbreaking. We'll be looking at some of the complications on Thursday. So it is very important that you communicate any change you notice in your body to your healthcare professional so they can handle it or start managing it immediately. Then lastly, find exercises that match your level of activity, like we've already mentioned. Yeah, so that's that for this. Then these are some useful resources. Like I said, diabetes is best managed in a multidisciplinary approach. So Alex was the one who even showed me these resources, really. So here are some diabetes care center in DC that I would encourage us to sign up for if you haven't, so you better understand how to manage the disease. So we have the first link is diabetes in older people. The other is Howard University Hospital Diabetes Care Center. I was actually going through their website and I was impressed with what they do. So you can check it out. Then you have the American Diabetes Association DC chapter, where they also offer educational services to diabetics here in DC. You can also check it out. That brings us to the end of today's presentation. Thank you so much, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you again, Margaret, for coming on to our presentation today and to showcase more about diabetes, and the information involved as well is so important for yourself, for others as well. It's very important that we're all aware of this information, especially that last fact where it said about 33% of the seniors will have diabetes at one point in their life. So that's a really big number. So it just makes me feel like, when I get to that age, I don't want to be that statistic. So, it's good to know, what you're dealing with. And this information today really has, opened my view on diabetes and what it takes to help treat it and to prevent it as well. So thank you so much for everything, Margaret. Any any final questions or comments from Margaret? But again, at 1:30 on Thursday this week, we'll be doing part 2. So some complications and ways to maintain yourself in many different ways. So again, thank you all so much for joining. Any questions or comments for Margaret about her session or anything in particular? Please raise your hand in Zoom, but don't forget to stay on to complete a poll to let us know how you felt about today's session. First question or comments from Anne. Again, thanks so much for joining.
You're welcome. Margaret did a good job. Thank you so much, because a lot of Howard University Center is very good, diabetic center. That's where I go. How can I find out more about metformin? Because I have a feeling that that's not agreeing with me too much.
Say that last part again, Anne. You went out.
Medicine, metformin. I'm feeling that it's not agreeing with me that much anymore. I'm having some symptoms of stuff, and I'm wondering if it's from that. I was just trying to figure out where I could find some more information.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Anne, for that question. So metformin is one of the first-line medications in managing type 2 diabetes. However, if your metformin is generally safe, but if you're experiencing any symptoms, it's important to go back to your physician and talk to him about it. So there are other options he could recommend based on your history, based on your chart. So if you're not comfortable with it, or if you feel it's not working as much as it used to, please do well to talk to your primary care physician. like I mentioned, it is very important we communicate any symptom we notice with our primary care physician so that these actions can be taken early enough, and everything can go back to normal. Because if you allow it stay, if you allow it progress, it might turn into something very huge. So it's important to go talk to your physician about it, and he would advise or recommend what to do. Thank
Okay,
you.
Margaret. Like I said, you did a good job.
Thank you so much.
Very good. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Anne. Advocate for yourself, okay? Just like we learned last week, if it doesn't work, if something doesn't work right, you can say no and ask for something else. So, just advocate for yourself, okay?
Yeah, I'm experiencing some numbness in my two fingers on my left hand, and
Yes.
and I've seen some stuff. You know how they put all this stuff to scare you online? People try to scare you and tell you this and that. And, I was just concerned about it, and I did mention it to my doctor, but she didn't seem to think that it was that big a deal. But it's worse now, so I'm going back to her in a few
Yeah, you
weeks.
should.
Yes.
Yeah, please go back to her.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, darling. God bless you.
You're welcome. Bless you too.
Thank you, Anne. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
Our next hand, again, a question or a comment from Margaret is from Geraldine. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you so much, Margaret, for your presentation. It was very informative. And I want to mention that I had type 2 diabetes, but how I don't have it anymore is by losing weight. And I lost the weight by doing what you just said. I eliminated processed foods, and I ate some of the superfoods that you listed on that chart. And I also got on the treadmill 30 minutes a day, just like you said on that. And I still get on the treadmill every day, 30 minutes. But those are the things I did, just like you said. And someone asked earlier, how can you get rid of type 2 diabetes? Yes, you can, but you need to lose weight. And you lose weight by doing what Margaret just got through saying in her presentation. That's how you lose the weight. But you lose the weight, and you'll get off of type 2 diabetes. You will get rid of type 2 diabetes if you lose that weight. So anyway, that's just my comment. But thank you so much, Margaret.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. I'm sure someone is inspired. Thank you. So it's actually possible to reverse type 2 diabetes. You just have to be willing to put in the work. But please talk to your primary care physician, and they'll be able to guide you accordingly.
Thank you so much, Geraldine. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
And I actually think like 2-3 years ago, we actually had a reversing diabetes specialist on. It was a few years ago. I think it's still on our YouTube channel, so I would try to check that out as well for you all. Our last hand that we see for now, and by the way, I put the majority of the links that Margaret had in her session today, I put them in the chat as well, so you can access some of that information as well. Mr. Angelo, you have a question or comment for Margaret?
Yeah. How you doing, Alex?
Good.
Yes, I just had a comment for Miss Margaret and also a question. But the comment is, and ditto to what was said just before this, is that I had type 2, supposedly. They said I had type 2 for a time, and I went to the doctor, and he said, he had me sticking my finger and stuff, getting blood out. And I don't know whether they had me on, I guess they had me on some medicine too, I'm not sure. But anyway, after about maybe 5-6 months, I went back and they said I didn't have it anymore. And the reason being, and I asked, said, because you've lost weight, and I attribute it to, thank God, for exercise, rest, eating the right foods, and everything, just like it was said before. So I want to thank you for that, everything you said, and the question, the person told me that type 1 diabetes, you may have said this, but I didn't hear it, is the worst because I don't know. It's supposed to be worse than type 2. I'm not sure. Can you expound on that?
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for sharing and thank you for the question. Like I mentioned, in type 1 diabetes, most times people who have type 1 diabetes don't have much control over it. It's because in type 1 diabetes, the beta cells that produce the insulin are not functioning at all. So there is no insulin at all. So there's you cannot talk about reversing it. You can't even take oral medications. The only treatment option is taking insulin, right? So, and this defect is either due to a viral infection or an autoimmune disease or something that is genetic. So in that regard, type 1 diabetes, would not say it's worse, it's just a different type of diabetes, right? And once you have your insulin and your healthcare team, you'll be able to manage and live through it. But it's different from type 2 diabetes where you have other options. But for type 1 diabetes, you just have to be on insulin. And as there are lots of technology around it, like your glucose pump that tells you your sugar level in real time, it helps you better manage type 1 diabetes, right? So we would not say it's worse, we'll just say it's a different type of diabetes that can be managed appropriately with the right support and education.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Angelo. We really appreciate that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Any other questions or comments for today? Again, thank you so much for Margaret for presenting to our seniors today. You put in a lot of work for this presentation, so it definitely translated across. And again, as always, for our Tuesday and Thursday guests, please share this information with your friends and family. You may never know whose life you might change or help out. Our last question for today, before we move on, we still must have a poll, is Ms. Clements. You have a question or comment for Margaret before we end for today?
Yes, good afternoon, Margaret.
Good afternoon.
So informative of your presentation, but I want to ask a question. It's about should the food we eat, should it be weighed or measured or in quantities?
Okay, that's a very good question. That's where your dietitian comes in. But as a rule of thumb, what I recommend is the plate method, where you divide your plates into 3 portions, half and a quarter. So you have half, 2 quarters, right? I think in next week's presentation, I will add a picture of the plate method. So 50%, like 1/2, should be filled with vegetables. Remember, I mentioned glycemic index. Vegetables have 0 glycemic indices. So when you eat lots of them, they don't lead to any spike in your sugar level. So you can eat lots of your vegetables without being worried about a rise in your sugar level. Then 25% of your meal, that is a quarter of it, should be carbs, because you need carbs, you need the energy, right? But you just don't want to eat too much of it, and it shouldn't be overly processed, because the more processed your carbs are, the less nutritious they become. The other 25% should be your protein. So with this, you have a fair idea of how to eat without actually measuring the food. But you'd want to talk with your dietitian more so that they can give you a tailored meal plan and a tailored education on how to go about eating in a way that helps you manage or reverse type 2 diabetes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Clement. Appreciate it. And thank you all so much for attending our session today. Again, don't forget to attend Margaret's session on Thursday for part 2 for diabetes complications, and again, some different methods that she can use to help with that. Other than that, please make sure you all stay on to complete a poll to let us know how you felt about today's session. But let's give a big and wonderful thank you to Margaret for presenting today's session. Thank you, Margaret, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you,
Thank
Margaret.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret. Oh,
Stay
cell
blessed.
phone.
Looking forward to
Bye.
Thank
Thank you,
participating.
Miss Margaret.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Very nice,
Thank
Margaret.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.